The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, nestled between grocery store flyers and credit card offers. My name was written in looping handwriting I didn't recognize, but something about the thick paper made my stomach tighten before I even opened it. Inside was a hotel bill from the Grand Metropolitan downtown. The name on the account made my blood freeze: Tristan Quinn. My husband. The total was $847 for a weekend stay I knew nothing about, because I'd been visiting my sick mother in Portland while he claimed to be working late on a big project. At the bottom, pressed into the paper like a signature, was a perfect lipstick print in deep red. Below it, in that same flowing script, "You deserve to know where your money goes. Someone who cares." I stared at the bill until the numbers blurred. My hands started shaking so violently I had to set it down on the kitchen counter. The coffee I'd been drinking turned bitter in my mouth. 7 years of marriage, and this was how I found out. But what struck me wasn't just the betrayal. It was the smugness behind that lipstick kiss. The calculated cruelty of making sure I knew exactly how much my husband had spent on another woman. She wanted me to feel small, broken, defeated. She had no idea what she'd just unleashed. I should have confronted Tristan immediately. A normal wife would have waved that bill in his face, screaming, demanding answers. Instead, I folded it carefully and slipped it into my jewelry box, beneath the pearl necklace he'd given me for our anniversary. Something cold had settled in my chest, replacing the initial shock. I moved through the rest of my day like an actress playing a role. When Tristan came home that evening with his usual kiss on the cheek and mundane office stories, I smiled and nodded and asked about his day. "Just the usual chaos," he said, loosening his tie. "Johnson's breathing down everyone's neck about the Morrison account. Had to stay late again yesterday working on proposals." I watched his face as he lied. He'd gotten better at it over the years, I realized. The easy way the words flowed, the casual eye contact, the slight irritation in his voice as if work was genuinely stressing him. I wondered how many other lies I'd swallowed without question. "Poor baby," I murmured, the way I always did. "You work too hard." He squeezed my shoulder absently, already reaching for his phone. "Just trying to keep us comfortable, you know? Comfortable. With hotel bills that cost more than our monthly groceries." That night, I lay awake listening to him sleep, planning my next move. The charade at dinner the next evening was almost unbearable. Tristan sat across from me, cutting his steak with precise movements, discussing his day like he was reading from a script. Everything felt performed, artificial. "Margaret's team is really struggling with the quarterly projections," he said between bites. "I might need to put in some weekend hours to help them catch up." Weekend hours. More hotel rooms, probably. More lipstick prints on bills sent to humiliate me. "That's so thoughtful of you," I replied, taking a slow sip of wine. "You've always been such a team player." He smiled at the compliment, that boyish grin that had made me fall in love with him in college. Now it looked like a mask. How long had he been wearing masks around me? "Speaking of weekends," I continued casually, "my book club is thinking about planning a retreat. Maybe somewhere nice, like the Grand Metropolitan downtown. Have you ever been there?" The fork paused halfway to his mouth for just a fraction of a second. Then he shrugged. "I think I've walked past it. Looks expensive." "It is," I agreed, meeting his eyes. "Very expensive." We finished dinner in comfortable silence, or what he probably thought was comfortable silence. I was memorizing every micro-expression, every tell, building a case in my mind. If he could play games, so could I. But I would play them better. The second envelope arrived exactly 1 week later, as if she was on some twisted schedule. This time, there was no subtlety. Along with another hotel bill, this one for $623 at the Riverside Inn, was a photograph. My husband and a stunning blonde woman at the hotel bar, his hand resting on her bare shoulder as she leaned into him, laughing. She wore a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and her smile was predatory. Triumphant. On the back of the photo, that same handwriting, he says you don't understand him anymore. Lucky for him, I do. Celine. Now she had a name. I studied her face with the detached interest of a scientist examining a specimen. She was younger than me, maybe early 30s, with the kind of confident beauty that came from knowing you could take anything you wanted. Including other women's husbands. But there was something else in her expression, something that made my jaw clench. She wasn't just sleeping with my husband. She was enjoying destroying me. The bills weren't accidents or guilty conscience, they were weapons. I locked myself in my study that night, spreading the evidence across my desk like a detective working a case. 2 hotel bills. 1 photograph. 7 years of marriage tax returns. Bank statements. Credit card records. It was time to stop being a victim and start being a strategist. I found Harper Lane's number through a friend of a friend who'd gone through a particularly nasty divorce. She's ruthless, my friend had whispered over Kofi. Expensive, but worth every penny if you want to destroy someone legally. Destroying someone legally sounded perfect. The law offices of Lane and Associates occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise. Harper herself was nothing like I'd expected. Mid-40s, silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, eyes that seemed to calculate the worth of everything they looked at. "Mrs. Quinn," she said, gesturing to a leather chair across from her massive desk. "I understand you're interested in divorce proceedings." "I'm interested in justice," I corrected, placing the hotel bills and photograph on her desk. Harper's expression didn't change as she examined the evidence, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "How long have you suspected?" "I didn't suspect. I was told." I explained about the envelopes, the lipstick kisses, the deliberate cruelty of it all. "She wants to humiliate you," Harper observed, setting down the photograph. "That's useful. Angry people make mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" "The kind that cost them everything." She leaned back in her chair. "But first, we need more evidence." "Much more. I'm going to connect you with someone who specializes in gathering information." She picked up her phone and dialed. "Dorian, I have a case for you." As I listened to her explain the situation, I felt something shift inside me. The cold anger was crystallizing into something sharper, more focused. For the first time since that first envelope arrived, I smiled. Dorian Pike looked exactly like I'd imagined a private investigator would, mid-50s, weathered face, eyes that missed nothing. We met at a small cafe near my office, choosing a corner table where our conversation wouldn't be overheard. "Harper filled me in on the basics," he said, sliding a manila folder across the table. "But I want to hear it from you. Every detail, no matter how small." I told him everything. The timeline of Tristan's late nights, the unexplained charges on our credit cards, the way he'd become distant and distracted. Dorian took notes in a small notebook, occasionally asking clarifying questions. "This Celine woman," he said finally. "She's not just having an affair. She's orchestrating psychological warfare. That takes a special kind of person." "What kind of person?" "The kind who's done this before." He closed his notebook. "I'll start surveillance tomorrow. Your husband's schedule, his routines, his usual haunts. Within a week, I'll know more about his movements than he does." "What about her?" Dorian's smile was predatory. "Oh, I'm very interested in learning about Ms. Celine. People who play games like this usually have secrets of their own." That night, I told Tristan I was having dinner with my sister. Instead, I sat in my car outside the Riverside Inn, watching the entrance. At 7:30, I saw them arrive together, Tristan in his best suit, Celine in another expensive dress, her arm linked through his like she owned him. The rage that filled me was white-hot and pure. But I didn't move. I sat there, taking pictures with my phone, learning to think like a hunter instead of prey. Dorian's first report arrived by email 3 days later. Attached were dozens of photographs, Tristan and Celine entering hotels, restaurants, even what looked like a jewelry store. Timestamps, locations, detailed observations. But it was the financial information that made my blood pressure spike. Subject has been making regular cash withdrawals, Dorian had written. $500 to $1,000 weekly, always from the ATM near his office. Credit card charges at high-end establishments during times when he claimed to be working late. Most concerning, wire transfer of $15,000 to an offshore account last month. $15,000. From our joint savings account, money we'd been setting aside for the down payment on a new house. I called Harper immediately. Wire transfers to offshore accounts suggest this isn't just an affair, she said after I read her Dorian's findings. That's serious financial misconduct. With the right evidence, we could pursue charges for financial fraud in addition to divorce proceedings. What do you need? Bank records, proof of unauthorized transfers, documentation of any assets being moved or hidden. I can subpoena most of it, but the more you can provide directly, the stronger our case becomes. That evening, I waited until Tristan was in the shower before accessing his laptop. His password was still our anniversary date, another bitter irony. Within minutes, I'd downloaded years of financial records, email correspondence, and browser history. The browser history alone was enough to turn my stomach. Hotel bookings, jewelry purchases, even apartment listings in neighborhoods we'd never discussed moving to. But the emails were worse. Months of correspondence with Celine, planning their secret meetings, discussing their future together, laughing about my apparent obliviousness. She's completely clueless, Celine had written. Probably thinks you're working late to buy her anniversary present. Tristan's response, let her think whatever she wants. By Christmas, this will all be over anyway. By Christmas, this would be over. I stared at those words until they burned into my memory. He was right. By Christmas, this would be over. Just not the way he expected. The surveillance photos Dorian provided the following week were devastating in their clarity. Tristan and Celine weren't just having an affair, they were building a life together. Shopping for furniture. Visiting apartments. Meeting with what looked like a real estate agent. My husband was planning to leave me, using our money to fund his new life with his mistress. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source, Celine herself. She's active on social media, Dorian explained during our weekly meeting. Very active. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. She likes to show of her lifestyle. He showed me his phone, scrolling through Celine Ward's Instagram account. Photo after photo of expensive meals, designer clothes, luxury hotel rooms. And in many of them, barely visible in reflections or shadows, was Tristan. She's documenting their entire relationship, I realized. Gets better, Dorian said. Look at the captions. I read them with growing amazement. Celine wasn't just posting photos, she was telling a story. Hints about a mysterious benefactor, references to being spoiled by someone special, even cryptic messages about helping someone make important life changes. She's creating evidence against herself, I breathed. Narcissists usually do, Dorian replied. They can't resist bragging, even when it incriminates them. That night, I printed every one of Celine's social media posts from the past 6 months. Organized by date, cross-referenced with our financial records, they painted a perfect picture of systematic theft and deception. My husband and his mistress had handed me everything I needed to destroy them both. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in November. I was organizing evidence files when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of a diamond necklace, clearly expensive, clearly new. Below it, he said, "You never appreciated the finer things." "Don't worry, I do. Thanks for the early Christmas present. S." The necklace was beautiful. It was also charged to our joint credit card, according to the alert I'd received earlier that day. Tristan had spent $3,200 on jewelry for his mistress, then came home and kissed me hello like nothing had happened. I was still staring at the photo when he walked through the door. "Hey, babe," he called, setting down his briefcase. "Sorry I'm late. Johnson kept us in the conference room until almost 8. I looked at the timestamp on Celine's text. She'd sent it at 7:15, 15 minutes before he'd claimed to leave the office. "How was your day?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Exhausting. This Morrison account is killing everyone. I might need to work this weekend too. More lies. More hotel rooms. More of our money spent on his mistress." "That's too bad," I said softly. "I was hoping we could spend some time together. It feels like we never talk anymore." He kissed my forehead absently, already reaching for his phone. "Soon, L. Just need to get through this project first." As he scrolled through his messages, probably texting Celine about their next secret meeting, I made my decision. The game was over. It was time to stop playing defense and go on the attack. I excused myself to the bedroom and called Harper. "How long do you need to prepare everything?" I asked. 2 weeks, she replied. "Maybe less if Dorian can get me the additional financial records we discussed." "Do it. I want this finished before Christmas." "Ilara, are you sure?" "Once we file, there's no going back." I thought about the hotel bills, the photographs, the stolen money, the diamond necklace. I thought about 7 years of marriage being treated like a joke. "I'm sure." Celine's next provocation arrived 3 days later, another hotel bill, this one for a 2-night stay at the Four Seasons. But this time, she'd included something extra, a copy of what looked like an apartment lease agreement with both her name and Tristan's on it. The apartment was in Harbor Village, the most expensive part of the city. Rent, $4,500 per month. Move-in date, January 1st. She wasn't just taunting me anymore. She was showing me the exact timeline of my replacement. I photographed everything and sent it to Harper and Dorian. Within an hour, Dorian called me back. "This lease is interesting," he said. "Want to know who co-signed for it? Please tell me it wasn't my husband." It was. But here's the thing, the deposit came from an account I've been tracking. Celine Ward has been receiving regular payments from something called South Bay Consulting for the past 8 months. What's South Bay Consulting? That's what I'm going to find out. But I have a feeling your husband isn't the only married man funding Ms. Ward's lifestyle. The possibility that Celine was running some kind of operation, targeting multiple married men, bleeding them dry, should have made me feel better. Instead, it made me angrier. My husband wasn't just an unfaithful spouse, he was a mark in someone else's con game. That evening, I watched Tristan carefully as he ate dinner and told me about his day. Really watched him. The slight tremor in his hands when his phone buzzed. The way he kept glancing toward the hallway, as if planning an escape route. The dark circles under his eyes that spoke of stress and sleepless nights. He looked like a man drowning. Good. By the time I was finished with him, drowning would seem like mercy. Harper's office felt different during our meeting the following Monday. More businesslike, more focused. The evidence files had grown into several thick folders spread across her conference table. "We have everything we need," she announced without preamble. "Financial records, photographic evidence, documentation of asset transfers, proof of fraudulent use of joint accounts. This isn't just a divorce case anymore, Ilara. This is criminal fraud." She opened the thickest folder, revealing bank statements highlighted in yellow. Your husband has systematically moved money from your joint accounts into hidden accounts, offshore transfers, and direct payments to his mistress. The total amount exceeds $65,000 over the past year. $65,000. I felt sick. Can we get it back? All of it, plus damages. But that's not the best part. Harper's smile was sharp as a blade. Celine Ward isn't just receiving money from your husband. Dorian's investigation uncovered 2 other married men making regular payments to her through the same consulting company. She's running a blackmail operation? Or something close to it. The pattern suggests she targets married men, initiates affairs, then pressures them for increasingly large gifts and investments. When they try to end things, she threatens to expose them to their wives. The irony was perfect. Celine had targeted my husband for extortion, not knowing that she was actually handing me the tools for my own revenge. What happens next? We file the divorce papers this Friday. Full financial disclosure, asset recovery, adultery charges. But we're also filing criminal complaints for fraud and extortion. The district attorney is very interested in Ms. Ward's business practices. As I left Harper's office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Justice wasn't just coming, it was coming with federal charges attached. The final piece of evidence arrived Thursday morning, delivered by Celine herself with typical arrogance. This time, she'd mailed me a printed copy of a text conversation between her and Tristan. Reading their messages was like watching my marriage die in real time. Celine, she's so pathetic. Does she really think you're working late every night? Tristan, she believes whatever I tell her. Always has. Celine, poor little housewife. I almost feel sorry for her. Tristan, don't. She's had a good run. Time for us to start our real life. Celine, when are you going to tell her? Tristan, Christmas Day. Seems fitting, a fresh start for the new year. Christmas Day. He was planning to destroy our marriage on Christmas Day. At the bottom of the printed conversation, Celine had written in her flowing script, "Thought you should know what he really thinks of you. Consider this my Christmas gift." As I sat in my kitchen, staring at those messages until the words blurred together. 7 years of marriage, and this was how little I'd meant to him. I was an obstacle to be removed, a problem to be solved. But as I read the conversation again, I started to smile. Celine thought she was delivering a final, crushing blow. Instead, she just provided the missing piece Harper needed to prove premeditation and deliberate infliction of emotional distress. I pay back immediately, it will be my pleasure. That night, I cooked Tristan's favorite dinner and opened a bottle of expensive wine. We sat across from each other at our dining room table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, where we'd planned our future, where he'd proposed on our 2nd anniversary. "This is nice," he said, raising his wine glass. "Feels like we haven't had a quiet evening together in months." "I know," I replied, touching my glass to his. "I wanted to make sure we had one more." He frowned slightly at my wording, but didn't ask what I meant. If he had, I might have told him. I might have explained that tomorrow, both our lives would change forever. But he didn't ask. And I didn't tell. Some surprises are worth keeping. Friday afternoon, I sat in a coffee shop across the street from Tristan's office building, watching through the window. At exactly 3:47 p.m., I saw Harper's assistant enter the lobby carrying a manila envelope. My phone buzzed 30 seconds later. A text from Harper, "Package delivered." I imagined Tristan's face when the receptionist called his name, when he opened the envelope expecting some routine business correspondence, when he realized his carefully constructed world was collapsing around him. The divorce papers Harper had prepared were comprehensive and devastating. Adultery charges with photographic evidence. Financial fraud with detailed accounting of every stolen dollar. requests for full asset recovery, alimony, and punitive damages for emotional distress. But the criminal complaints were the real masterpiece. Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy charges that could result in federal prison time for both Tristan and Celine. My phone rang at 4:23 p.m. Tristan's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again at 4:25. Again at 4:28. By 5 p.m., I had 7 missed calls and a series of increasingly frantic text messages. Ilara, we need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. Please call me back. Where are you? I'm coming home. I finished my coffee slowly, savoring both the bitter taste and the sweet satisfaction of finally being the one in control. Then I drove home to face my husband for what I hoped would be the last time. He was waiting in our driveway when I pulled up, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. The divorce papers were clutched in his hand, already wrinkled from his grip. Ilara. He rushed toward my car as I got out. What the hell is this? What are you doing? I looked at him calmly, taking in his disheveled appearance, his panicked expression, the way his hands shook as he waved the papers. I'm getting a divorce, I said simply. You can't be serious, Tristan said, following me into the house. We can work this out. Whatever you think is happening. I don't think anything, I interrupted, setting my purse down on the kitchen counter. I know exactly what's happening. I know about Celine. I know about the hotels, the stolen money, the apartment lease, all of it. His face went white. How did you? She told me. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to one of Celine's photos. She's been sending me evidence for weeks. Hotel bills, photographs, even your private text messages. She wanted me to know exactly how little I meant to you. Tristan stared at the phone screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. She sent you these? Every humiliating detail. Did you really think you could just disappear on Christmas Day without me figuring out what happened? It wasn't supposed to happen like this, he said, sinking into a kitchen chair. We were going to have a conversation, work something out. Work something out. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You stole $65,000 from our joint accounts. You bought your mistress a diamond necklace with our credit card. You signed a lease for an apartment without telling me. What exactly were we going to work out? The money, I can pay it back. I can explain. To the federal investigators? I watched his face crumble as the full implications hit him. Wire fraud is a felony, Tristan. So is embezzlement. You're not just losing a wife. You're looking at prison time. He buried his face in his hands. This isn't how it was supposed to happen. No, I agreed. It was supposed to happen with you disappearing on Christmas morning, leaving me with empty bank accounts and a pile of debt. Thank God for Celine's arrogance. She saved me from discovering this the hard way. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Celine's name flashed on the screen. Speaking of which, I said, answering the call and putting it on speaker. Hello, Celine. You stupid bitch. Celine's voice filled our kitchen, sharp with fury. What did you do? I filed for divorce, I said calmly. And criminal charges. I thought you'd be happy you'll finally have Tristan all to yourself. In federal prison. This is insane. You can't prove anything. I laughed, actually laughed. Celine, you sent me photographs. You sent me hotel bills with your lipstick on them. You sent me your text conversations. You documented your entire relationship on social media. I didn't have to prove anything, you proved it for me. Silence on the other end of the line. Oh, I continued, and the FBI is very interested in your consulting company. Something about multiple married men making payments to you? They're calling it an extortion ring. That's not true. The bank records say otherwise. So do the other wives who've been contacted by investigators. Tristan was staring at the phone in horror. Other wives? You didn't know? I asked him. Celine's been running this scam on multiple men. You weren't special, Tristan. You were just another mark. Celine's voice came through the speaker again, higher now, panicked. Tristan, get a lawyer. Don't say anything to anyone. We can fight this. We? Tristan's voice was hollow. There is no we, Celine. There never was. Don't you dare. He hung up on her. For several minutes, we sat in silence. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across our kitchen. The same kitchen where we'd eaten breakfast together every morning for 7 years. Where we'd planned vacations and discussed dreams and laughed at inside jokes. I never meant to hurt you, Tristan said finally. Yes, you did, I replied. You might not have intended to get caught, but you absolutely intended to hurt me. You planned this, Tristan. All of it. He couldn't argue with that. We both knew it was true. The next 24 hours passed in a surreal blur. Tristan moved into a hotel, ironically, not one of the places where he'd met Celine. I changed the locks, cancelled his credit cards, and transferred our joint savings into my individual account. Harper had been busy too. By Saturday evening, she'd served Celine with her own set of legal papers, criminal charges for extortion, fraud, and conspiracy. The FBI had frozen her bank accounts and seized her computer records. She's cooperating, Harper informed me during our phone call. Trying to work out a plea deal by providing information about your husband's involvement. Let her, I said. He made his choice. Sunday morning brought an unexpected visitor, Tristan's mother, Eleanor. She stood on my doorstep looking older than her 72 years, clutching a tissue and struggling to maintain her composure. Ilara, dear, she said when I opened the door. May I come in? I'd always loved Eleanor. She'd welcomed me into their family without reservation, treated me like the daughter she'd never had. Having this conversation with her was going to be one of the hardest parts of this entire mess. Of course, I said, stepping aside. We sat in the living room, surrounded by wedding photos and family pictures that would soon be meaningless. Eleanor dabbed at her eyes with the tissue. Tristan called me, she said. He told me about everything. I'm so sorry, dear. I'm so deeply sorry. You don't have anything to apologize for. I raised him better than this. His father and we taught him about commitment, about honor. I don't know where we went wrong. You didn't go wrong, Eleanor. Tristan made his own choices. She nodded, but I could see the guilt eating away at her. He's asked me to help pay for a lawyer. To help him fight the charges. I waited. I told him no, she continued. What he did to you, what he did to your marriage, it's unforgivable. If he goes to prison, maybe it will teach him something about consequences. Relief flooded through me. I'd been afraid that family loyalty would override Eleanor's sense of justice. Thank you, I said. No, dear. Thank you. For showing him who he really is. Monday brought a call from Detective Morrison, the FBI agent handling Celine's case. Mrs. Quinn, we need to discuss the scope of Ms. Ward's operation. Based on the evidence you provided and her preliminary statements, we believe she's been targeting married men across 3 states. How many victims? At least 12 that we've identified so far. The pattern is always the same: initiate an affair, pressure for increasingly expensive gifts, then threaten exposure when the men try to end things. Your husband appears to be the only one who went willingly into the financial arrangements. The only one who went willingly. Even among Celine's victims, Tristan was uniquely pathetic. What happens now? Ms. Ward has agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. She's providing details about her methods, her financial records, everything. Your husband's case will likely go to trial, but with her testimony and the evidence you've provided, conviction is almost certain. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen now, and tried to process everything that had happened. 2 weeks ago, I'd been a naive wife who believed her husband worked late. Now I was a witness in a federal fraud case. My phone buzzed with a text from Harper, preliminary asset evaluation complete. Looks like you'll recover everything plus damages. Tristan's lawyer called about a settlement meeting. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. No settlement. Let it go to trial. Some lessons couldn't be taught with plea bargains and confidential agreements. Some consequences needed to be public. Tristan had wanted to end our marriage on Christmas Day, in private, on his terms. Instead, he was going to lose everything in open court, in front of judges and juries and newspaper reporters. The irony was perfect. The family anniversary party was supposed to be a celebration. Tristan's parents, Eleanor and Frederick, were celebrating their 52nd wedding anniversary with a formal dinner at the Riverside Country Club. The same country club where Tristan and I had held our wedding reception 7 years ago. Eleanor had called to ask if I was still planning to attend, given the circumstances. Of course, I'd told her. Tristan's legal troubles don't change how much you both mean to me. What I didn't mention was that Harper had suggested the party as the perfect venue for serving Tristan with additional papers, subpoenas for the criminal trial, asset seizure orders, and formal notice of the FBI investigation. Public service of process can be psychologically devastating, Harper had explained. Especially in front of family members who don't know the full scope of his crimes. Tristan was already at the party when I arrived, standing near the bar with his younger brother Timothy and their cousin Paul. He looked terrible, thin, hollow-eyed, wearing a suit that no longer fit properly. The stress was eating him alive. He saw me walk in and his face went even paler. We hadn't spoken since that awful night in our kitchen. Eleanor appeared at my side, taking my arm warmly. You look beautiful, dear. That dress is stunning. I'd chosen carefully a black cocktail dress that was elegant but severe. Funeral appropriate. Thank you, Eleanor. This is such a wonderful party. For the next hour, I mingled with family members who had no idea their perfect son and brother was facing federal charges. They asked about our marriage with concern, having heard rumors about trouble. I was diplomatically vague. These things work out the way they're supposed to, I told Tristan's Aunt Margaret. At exactly 8:30 p.m. Harper arrived. Harper entered the country club dining room wearing her most intimidating suit, carrying a leather briefcase that commanded immediate attention. Conversations quieted as she made her way across the room toward our table. Tristan Quinn, she said in a voice that carried clearly through the suddenly silent room. Tristan stood slowly, his face the color of ash. Yes. Harper Lane, representing your wife in divorce proceedings. You're being served with additional subpoenas related to federal criminal charges. She handed him a thick envelope with practiced efficiency. Around us, family members stared in shocked silence. I heard someone whisper, "Criminal charges? This can't wait." Tristan's voice was barely audible. I'm afraid not. The FBI requires your appearance before a federal grand jury next Thursday at 9 a.m. Details are in the paperwork. Eleanor gasped audibly. Frederick half rose from his chair, his face flushed with anger and confusion. Federal grand jury? Timothy spoke up. Tristan, what's going on? Harper answered before Tristan could. Mr. Quinn is under investigation for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy in connection with a multi-state extortion ring. The silence was deafening. Additionally, Harper continued, we're serving notice that all marital assets are frozen pending resolution of the criminal case. This includes the joint accounts, the house, and any property purchased with funds obtained through fraudulent means. She handed him a second envelope. Your cooperation in these matters would be appreciated. Good evening. Harper nodded politely to Eleanor and Frederick, then walked out of the dining room as efficiently as she'd entered. The explosion of whispered conversations started immediately. Tristan, explain this right now, Frederick demanded, his voice shaking with fury. Tristan stood frozen, clutching the envelopes like they might explode. Around our table, family members leaned in, waiting for answers. It's complicated, he managed. Complicated? Eleanor's voice was sharp. The FBI doesn't investigate complicated, Tristan. They investigate crimes. I watched the scene unfold with detached fascination. For months, Tristan had been living a double life, managing secrets and lies and complex deceptions. Now, in front of 50 family members, it was all falling apart at once. There's been a misunderstanding, he said weakly. What kind of misunderstanding involves extortion? Timothy asked. Tristan's eyes found mine across the table. For a moment, I saw desperation there, a silent plea for help. He wanted me to speak up, to provide some explanation that would make sense of this nightmare. I said nothing. Tristan, Eleanor said slowly, where's Celine tonight? The question hung in the air like a bomb about to explode. Eleanor knew about Celine. Of course she did, mothers always know. She's not. Tristan couldn't finish the sentence. She's in federal custody, I said quietly, awaiting trial for running an extortion ring that targeted married men across multiple states. The intake of breath around the table was audible. And my son was involved in this. Frederick's voice was deadly calm. According to the FBI, yes. He was her primary co-conspirator and the source of most of her funding. Timothy stared at his brother in horror. You funded an extortion ring with family money? It wasn't supposed to be. Tristan stopped himself, probably realizing that explaining how it was supposed to be would only make things worse. Eleanor stood slowly, placing her napkin on the table with deliberate precision. This party is over, she announced to the room. Frederick and I will be leaving now. As they walked toward the exit, Eleanor paused beside my chair. Thank you, dear, she whispered, for showing us who he really is. Then they were gone, along with most of the other family members, leaving Tristan standing alone in the emptying dining room, still clutching his subpoenas. The trial began on a cold Tuesday in February. Federal courthouse, marble columns, reporters clustered on the steps with cameras and notebooks. 3 months earlier, I'd been a housewife who trusted her husband. Now I was the star witness in a federal fraud case. Celine had indeed cooperated, providing devastating testimony about their operation. She described recruiting Tristan, teaching him to access joint accounts, planning their future together with stolen money. In exchange for her cooperation, she'd received a reduced sentence, 3 years instead of 10. But Tristan had refused to cooperate. His lawyer was mounting a defense based on emotional manipulation, claiming Celine had seduced and controlled him. It might have worked, if not for the evidence Celine herself had provided me. When I took the witness stand, the prosecutor walked me through the timeline methodically. The hotel bills. The photographs. The text messages. The systematic theft of our joint assets. Mrs. Quinn, the prosecutor said, in your opinion, was your husband acting under duress when he transferred money to Ms. Ward? No, I replied. The evidence shows he was an eager participant who planned to leave me for her using money stolen from our joint accounts. How do you know this? I pulled out the final piece of evidence, the text conversation Celine had sent me where Tristan discussed leaving me on Christmas Day. He planned to end our marriage as a Christmas surprise, I said. Using money he'd stolen from me to fund his new life with his co-conspirator. The defense attorney tried to discredit me during cross-examination, suggesting I was a bitter ex-wife seeking revenge. But the evidence was overwhelming. Bank records, electronic communications, witness testimony from other victims, it all painted the same picture. Tristan wasn't a victim. He was a calculating thief who'd been caught. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was held on a Thursday in March. I sat in the gallery watching as Tristan stood before the judge, wearing an ill-fitting suit and an expression of complete defeat. The judge was thorough in her condemnation. "Mr. Quinn, you systematically betrayed the trust of your wife, your family, and the financial institutions you defrauded. You stole money meant for your joint future and used it to fund an extortion operation that harmed multiple families across 3 states." She paused, looking directly at him. "Your actions show a complete disregard for the law and for the welfare of others. The court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You are also ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, plus damages. 8 years. He would be 47 when he got out, assuming good behavior. Celine was sentenced immediately afterward, 3 years as promised, plus restitution. She'd cooperated fully, provided useful testimony, and shown what the judge called genuine remorse for her actions. As they led her out in handcuffs, she looked directly at me. "I'm sorry," she mouthed. I nodded acknowledgement but felt nothing. Her apology was 3 months too late and directed at the wrong person anyway. She should have been apologizing to all the wives she'd helped destroy, not to the one who'd fought back. After the sentencing, I stood on the courthouse steps breathing the cold March air. Harper appeared beside me, looking satisfied. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Free," I said. And I meant it. For the first time in months, I felt completely, totally free. The asset recovery took another 2 months to complete. The FBI seized Celine's luxury condo, her car, her jewelry, everything purchased with stolen money. Tristan's offshore accounts were frozen and liquidated. Even the diamond necklace she'd taunted me with was sold at auction. In the end, I recovered $127,000, more than the original $65,000 stolen, thanks to damages and interest. The house was mine free and clear, along with our remaining legitimate assets. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was the phone call I received from Timothy on a Saturday afternoon in April. "Ilara, I wanted you to know the family's grateful for what you did. Dad especially. He said you showed more integrity in 6 months than Tristan showed in his entire life. I'm sorry it had to happen this way. Don't be. Better to know who he really is than to keep living with the lie." Eleanor called later that same day. "Dear, Frederick and I are updating our will. We want to make sure you're taken care of, regardless of what happens with Tristan." "Eleanor, that's not necessary. It is to us. You'll always be our daughter, divorce or no divorce." Those words meant more than any financial settlement. Family, real family, wasn't about blood or marriage certificates. It was about people who stood by you when everything fell apart. That evening, I sat in my kitchen, definitely my kitchen now, reading news coverage of the trial. The headlines were brutal. Local businessman sentenced in extortion ring. Wife's evidence helps convict fraudster husband. Marriage betrayal leads to federal prison. Tristan had gotten his Christmas surprise after all. Just 8 months late, and not quite what he'd planned. A year later, I received a letter from federal prison. Tristan's name was on the return address. I almost threw it away unopened. Instead, I made myself a cup of coffee and read it in my garden, surrounded by the flowers I'd planted to replace the memories of our old life together. "Ilara," it began. "I know you have no reason to read this, but I needed to try to explain." He went on for 3 pages, describing his regrets, his realization about what he'd lost, his plans for when he got out of prison. He claimed to understand now that what he'd done was wrong. He talked about counseling and reflection and becoming a better person. I hope someday you can forgive me, he concluded. Not for my sake, but for yours. Holding on to anger will only hurt you in the end. I read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. Not because I was keeping it as a treasured memento, but because it was evidence of one final manipulation attempt. Even from prison, Tristan was trying to manage the narrative. The letter wasn't about remorse, it was about making himself feel better. He wanted forgiveness not because he deserved it, but because it would ease his guilt. I had no intention of providing that comfort. That evening, I had dinner with Harper at an upscale restaurant downtown. We'd become unlikely friends during the legal proceedings, bonded by our shared appreciation for justice properly served. Any word from our favorite federal inmate? She asked over wine. 3 pages of self-serving nonsense, I replied. He wants forgiveness. Of course he does. Are you considering it? I've already forgiven him, I said. I forgave him the day the jury returned their verdict. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means I'm not carrying his burden anymore. Harper raised her wine glass. To not carrying other people's burdens. To making them carry their own. 2 years have passed since that first hotel bill arrived in my mailbox. I've moved to a smaller house in a better neighborhood, started a consulting business, learned to sleep through the night without wondering where my husband really was. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how everything played out. If I wish I'd tried counseling, mediation, a more private resolution. The answer is always no. Tristan and Celine made their choices deliberately and systematically. They planned to destroy my life using my own money, then disappear on Christmas Day, leaving me with debt and humiliation. Their only regret was getting caught. I gave them exactly what they deserved, consequences. The hotel bills Celine sent weren't just evidence of an affair, they were declarations of war. She wanted to break me, humiliate me, force me to accept my replacement quietly and gracefully. Instead, I broke them both. The most satisfying part isn't the money I recovered or the justice I achieved. It's the knowledge that I took control of my own story. Instead of being the victim in their narrative, I became the architect of their downfall. They thought they were playing chess with someone who didn't know the rules. They were wrong. Last week, I received another letter from Tristan. I didn't open it. I dropped it directly into the shredder and went on with my day. Some chapters of your life deserve to end decisively, without epilogues or second chances. Some people forfeit their right to your attention, your consideration, your forgiveness. Tristan and Celine forfeited theirs the moment they decided I was disposable. They sent me hotel bills to humiliate me. I sent them to federal prison to destroy them. The equation balanced perfectly,